So, what happens when someone dies? So, from the perspective of Solancha, and again, the philosophy of Hermeticism, which Solancha is aligned with, there is a very specific process that takes place. Greetings and welcome. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the soul's journey beyond the physical body. We've been getting a few different questions in regard to this. And whenever I receive these types of questions, at the heart of it, what they're really asking is a deeper question about who am I? What is the nature of my existence? What is the purpose of life? Where did we come from? So they're really trying to get at the heart of this. But today we're going to explore this question a little bit more and hopefully answer some of those deeper questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question: Hermetic philosophy teaches that the soul exists on multiple levels and continues beyond the physical death, shedding layers of personality and ego. Can you describe what actually happens as we move beyond the physical plane? What are these layers that get shed, and what remains after we release the physical, emotional, and mental forms? So that's a great question, and your question actually answers a little bit of that already. And it gets at the heart of the question, which is the nature of our existence. And so you first have to understand that we are more than the physical body, right? We actually consist of multiple bodies, and we are each one of these bodies have a certain level of consciousness and awareness based on a certain vibrational scale of energy. And so at the slowest vibration, we have our physical body, which our consciousness is anchored in, right? And that we're used to. But a little bit higher frequency above that, we also have a body that's called the astral body. This is what we use in Solancha and Hermeticism in general, this particular framework. And the astral body is essentially your emotional body, and it is the body that registers all of your feelings and sensations and really stores the memory of this current lifetime, right? So it's kind of a database of all of that and connects to your subconscious and your nervous system. And we won't go into too much detail about that, but essentially think of this as more of your emotional body and a database of or storage of your memories for this particular lifetime. And then at the next level of vibration is really abstract thought, right? Or your intellect, and is called the mental body. And your mental body in Hermeticism and in Solancha is actually what we call our actual true eternal self, your spirit. The soul, even though in this day and age, a lot of people think of the soul as being eternal, this is actually a temporal part of your being. As I mentioned before, at the astral level, your emotional body is really a record of feeling and sensation and memory for this particular lifetime. And that is what we call your soul. So your soul is registering all of the information for this particular lifetime, but it is not eternal itself. Your spirit is what's eternal, and that's directly connected to your mental body, okay? And above your mental body would be considered the higher spiritual realms, and your higher self or your monadic self. And we won't get too much into that. But really what you want to understand is you have a physical body, you have your astral emotional body, which is your soul. And then you also have your mental body, which is your spirit or your eternal self. So, what happens when someone dies? So, from the perspective of Solancha, and again, the philosophy of Hermeticism, which Solancha is aligned with, there is a very specific process that takes place. And the first thing that happens when the physical body experiences death is that consciousness then detaches from the physical body and passes through multiple layers of its own energy field, right? And and essentially that energy field are the different planes of existence that we've talked about, and that is the astral plane and the mental plane, right? So remember, as I mentioned before, we are a multi-dimensional being. That's what we actually are. And so what will happen is we will detach from the physical body. There's also a vital energy body, an etheric body that first dissipates. And then from there, our consciousness will pull back into our astral body, right? From there, we're going to go through a process where we are working through the emotions. Sometimes there's people have experienced a life review. A lot of times when people have near-death experiences, it's from this particular level of consciousness. And what will happen there as you're working through all of that, eventually the astral body will dissipate as well too. Okay, so just like the physical body will actually deteriorate over time, the astral body will as well. And then what happens is your consciousness continues to pull back, and it'll move into the mental plane, right? And each time your consciousness pulls back into one of these different planes, there's a vibrational scale within that plane that you are going to be most attuned to. And depending on how you lived your life physically, the the things that consumed your emotions and your mental processes are going to determine where your center of gravity or the vibrational frequency that you are most aligned with, right? And so it's said that on each plane there'll be like 7 subplanes. And so, for example, on the astral plane, you might have these 7 subplanes, and depending on your emotional state at the point of your death, what will happen is you will find yourself on one of these different subplanes. And so an example, as there can be very high levels of the astral plane, right? Astral light that you can experience. And then there's really lower astral levels as well too, right? Sometimes these have been considered like the hellish realms and that sort of thing. And it all really kind of depends on how somebody's lived their life. So although there isn't really such a thing as hell, when somebody passes away, depending on how they lived their life on the physical plane, they might find themselves on a subplane within the astral for a period of time that feels like hell to them, right? So in that sense, it can be a very real thing, but it's not eternal. Although it may feel like it at times for them, because the astral plane is really timeless. So the sense of time is quite different there. But eventually the astral body will dissipate, and the consciousness will continue to detach and pull back into the mental plane, right? And from the mental plane, it's the same thing, depending on how you lived your life and what consumed you mentally. You will find yourself on a particular plane that you are a vibrational match for as well, right? And just like the astral plane, there are multiple subplanes that exist there too, which can be higher light realms on the mental plane level, and then lower levels as well. So What happens after you get to the mental plane? What will happen eventually there is you eventually get pulled back into another life. And what happens is that there is a sum total of all the lives that you have lived that are being stored within your spirit and within the Akashic plane. And what will happen is, depending upon where your particular center of gravity is, right, within your mental body, based on all the different experiences you've had over the course of various lifetimes, you will be kind of magnetically pulled back into another life that is a vibrational match for you, as another opportunity to try and create greater harmony within all of your various bodies. Again, it's really a process of evolution, right, which goes to the heart again of why we are here and what is the purpose of life. Everything is actually evolving, and we evolve by cultivating greater harmony and balance on each one of these multi-dimensional layers of existence. And so on the mental level, what will happen, or within your spirit, there will be a imbalance to your being that will then pull you back into another life as another opportunity to be able to try and establish greater harmony through continued lessons and more opportunities for you to be able to establish more harmony and balance within your life. So again, as I mentioned before, we're a multidimensional being that consists of a physical body, a kind of vital energy body as well, an astral emotional body, and a mental body, which is our eternal spirit. And as somebody passes away, their consciousness detaches and will gradually pull back to each one of these bodies until it reaches the spirit. And eventually you'll get pulled back into another life experience through reincarnation. Now, what will happen is once somebody has developed enough and they've established enough balance within their spirit, they then have the option to be able to reincarnate or not. But for most people, this is what will happen, and they'll continue to have multiple lifetimes until they've reached this level of balance and harmony within their spirit. Okay, so what was the other question we had here? How does the soul retain learning or experience from this lifetime if the personality dissolves? So again, we kind of addressed that already, right? The astral body or emotional body is what we typically call the soul. And your soul contains the personality or ego for this particular lifetime. And while the soul dissolves over a period of time after death, the kind of highlights or the major themes of that particular life are still stored within the spirit, right, within the mental body. And so what will happen is it's kind of like the main points or highlights or theme of that life are carried over from one lifetime to another. And then, of course, even though that information for that particular life, your personality is stored on the soul level or astral level, everything is actually stored at the Akashic level of existence, which is also made available to individuals once they've reached a certain level of spiritual maturity. So again, your personality isn't being carried over from one life to another. Each lifetime is going to have an entirely different personality and ego specific to that particular lifetime, but themes and lessons are going to get carried over from one lifetime to another as an opportunity for you to be able to continue to develop and to continue the process of evolution from one lifetime to the next. Is there continuity of consciousness, or do we truly forget who we were? So, again, this is another question that really kind of ties into what we've been talking about today, in that the continuity exists, like I said, on a thematic level, right? So you are continuing to evolve from one lifetime to the next, but you're not carrying all of the egoic personality and baggage that you might have accumulated from one lifetime to another. And there's a very specific reason for that, right? Each lifetime is an opportunity for you to really be able to focus on a very specific theme for that particular life, for you to continue your process of evolution, and for the spirit to be able to grow. And if you were burdened by every single thing that you did, right? All of the, not just the good things that you've done, but you also would be remembering all of the negative things that you've done. And you have to remember, you've had hundreds, if not thousands, of different lifetimes. And if you were to carry all the memories from that, it would create a certain type of karma and cause and effect and behavioral and behaviors and thoughts and actions that wouldn't be conducive for you to be able to focus on the one particular purpose for this particular lifetime, right? So it's really, don't think of it as forgetting. It is really done on purpose, right? This isn't a prison planet. You're not being forced to be here and your memories are wiped away because it's trying to do something harmful for you. It's really actually helping you to be able to focus on the particular theme and purpose for this particular life right now, right? So that's the reason why that actually happens. But as I mentioned before, you still are carrying the general theme from one lifetime to another, continuing to evolve from one lifetime and through each reincarnation that you actually have, right? So there is a forward process of evolution. And a great example is, although you may not remember the details of it, in this lifetime, you might feel like you have a certain affinity to be able to play an instrument, or maybe you feel like drawing really came easy to you. You were talented in a particular modality of some sort or art form. And that might be because you spent a lot of time cultivating that skill in a particular life, right? And although you don't remember that exactly, it's still registered within your spirit. So there's something in you that resonates with you, and that's why it comes a little bit more easier and more easily for you than it might be for others. And it's the same thing with spiritual practices. So you might be drawn to Solancha, Hermeticism, or various spiritual practices this lifetime because you've been slowly exploring this for multiple lifetimes, and now you've reached this level of spiritual maturity where you're wanting to dive into some of the deeper philosophical practices and principles that Hermeticism and Solancha are currently teaching and discussing. So that's basically how that works. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Okay, so the next question here, let's see. How can someone understand the process without fear, especially the idea of losing their personality or memories? So again, we've kind of touched on this again already. There's really nothing to be fearful about. The first thing you have to remember is what we already talked about and discussed initially, which is that you are a multidimensional being. You are not your personality. You are not your ego. There's a very specific purpose for your ego and personality. You need that to be able to fully engage within the physical experience of this lifetime, right? And that's very important. But that is not who you are. It's who you really are is spirit, right? And that's connected to your mental body and then ultimately your higher self or your monadic God self, right? But it's really nothing to be fearful of. And it's only because you have an attachment to this very specific life, this very specific and unique body. And if you were to be able to understand how many different bodies you've had, how many lives that you've lived, you'd really understand that there's nothing to be fearful about at all. And you can really just relax and engage fully into this life, knowing that you are here with a very specific purpose. And your goal is to be able to live this life completely and fully and as engaged as you possibly can, knowing that that's going to contribute to your true self, which is your spirit. Okay, so we've got one more question here along the same theme. From a Hermetic perspective, what is the ultimate purpose of this cycle of embodiment and return to source? So, this is a great question, and there's a lot of different ways that this could be answered. And even within the Solantra system and Hermeticism in general, it would probably, depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer, right? But ultimately, I would say that the main purpose behind all of these lives, right, and the process of reincarnation is evolution. All of creation, all of the universe is in a state of evolution. And that evolutionary process is taking place from one lifetime to the next, right? And each time you pass from one life to the next, your spirit is becoming more mature through each of these lifetimes. And through that evolution, you are cultivating what we would call a state of balance or harmony or equilibrium, right? And that cultivation of equilibrium happens through a deeper understanding through experience of your true nature of who you are. So it's not something that is actually just intellectual, but it is what would be called gnosis, right? Direct experience of your true nature of who you are. This is what would be considered enlightenment, right? Or self-realization. So each lifetime you are evolving and you're moving closer to that state of self-realization. And the actual process of achieving that requires you to cultivate an understanding of thought, action, and behavior through your multidimensional being that is in alignment with that true nature, which is a higher vibration, which ultimately is a kind of stillness, right? So as you get closer to your true self, there is a higher vibratory rate that you're reaching, which is closer to a state of stillness, complete stillness. And again, there might be, depending on who you ask, there's multiple answers that you could get. You have purposes for this. There's a specific purpose for this particular lifetime for you, right? And only you are going to be able to connect with that and be able to learn what that actually is. But at the end of the day, what's happening from one lifetime to the next is a process of evolution. And you are cultivating greater and greater harmony and balance and stillness. And that stillness is equates to a higher vibration, which becomes a vibrational match to your true self, right? Or God, right? So the closer you are aligned with that true, that stillness and vibrational state, the closer you are actually to God. And that's really what's happening through this process of evolution. Okay, so that was the last question. Really great questions. This comes up a lot. And I love this question because it gets at the heart of, really those bigger questions of, who am I? What are we here for? What's the purpose of life? Where do we come from? And just as a quick recap, the most important thing to understand is that we are more than the physical body. We are a multi-dimensional being that consists of a physical body, an emotional or astral body, a mental body, and then eventually our higher self as well. And the astral body or emotional body is what we would call the soul, which is connected to this particular lifetime, our ego and personality. And our eternal self or our spirit is connected to our mental body on the mental plane, right? So we're a multidimensional being having a multidimensional experience. When the physical body passes away, our consciousness will systematically move up the vibrational scale, pulling itself back into the astral body, which eventually will pass away as well. Then eventually moving us into the mental plane and mental body, which will spend a certain amount of time there as well. And that eventually will pull us back into another life through the process of reincarnation based on our particular vibrational match at that time. So I hope that answers all your questions. If not, please send additional questions in. Or if you have any other questions you'd like us to be able to answer, please leave your question in the comment below. And until next time, may the path of light guide and protect.